Continuing our study of the beautiful way, I'd just like to note again what in our last lesson we began with. What's that text in 1 John 3:2? When he shall appear, we shall be what? Like him. Now, why is that verse of particular interest to you and me? That's us. We're the ones that he's going to appear to, is that right? Unto them that look for him shall he appear. The second time, Hebrews 9:28. We're those. In fact, that's where we get our name, Adventists. That's it. We are expecting the personal appearing of Jesus in our time. These eyes shall behold him. But when he comes, he's going to find us in what condition? Like him. Not getting ready, but ready. Like him. And we found in our last lesson that we become like him by what? Beholding. And so we're going to behold. We're going to look at that beautiful life. And oh, what a beautiful life his is. Now, as we noted, will the world at large see or recognize or acknowledge that beauty? No. Oh, that's a sad thing. That was what caused Jesus to weep those tears at the brow of Olivet. It broke his heart, dear friends. It broke his heart that he had come with the beautiful life of heaven brought down to this world. Lived as men could live it. But men didn't want it. Only a few. Thank God, some did. John said the life was manifested, and we beheld it, and we declare unto you that eternal life. Oh, friends, I pray that God will fill our hearts with the beauty of his wonderful life. Now, we found in our last lesson that beauty is to be represented in every phase of our life. We went through that list of 10 things. And as I said in the lesson, that's just by way of introduction, illustration. It's to extend to everything. And remember, when it comes down to the details, there are going to be differences in viewpoint about things. If you were asked to name your favorite flower, some of you here would say a rose. Am I right? Some would say a carnation. Some would say a sweet pea. And I don't know, there might be somebody queer enough to say some flower that all the rest would smile at. But they'd have some reason for it in their minds. Anything wrong with that? No, that's all right. It's all right. But wouldn't it be a shame, friends, if anybody would say, my favorite plant is the bramble? I just love to collect thorns. Other people have a stamp collection or a shell collection or a pressed butterfly collection. But my hobby is collecting thorns, thistles, brambles. I've gathered the thorns from the locust and the thistles and these sawbriars. In fact, I have a whole room full at home of them. That would be strange, wouldn't it? That'd be missing what? Beauty. Yes. Beauty. Beauty. Well, so there's room for different views of beauty, but we want to be sure that we are lining up with heaven's ideas of beauty. Now, in this class, really our purpose is to find out what is beautiful. I want you to stop and think about that a minute. If what we have studied already is so, then most people don't know what beautiful is. Because when Jesus came, they saw in him what? No beauty. But you and I say he's the one altogether lovely. Now, if a Christian says he's all beautiful, and the world says there's no beauty in him, obviously they're using different yardsticks, aren't they? How foolish it would be then to look to the world to tell us what beauty is. In dress, in music, in literature, in manners, in anything. Now, when I say that, I don't mean to imply that there is no beauty or no beauty appreciation in the world until probation closes and the time of trouble comes. There will be in this world a mixture of good and evil, truth and error, and a certain appreciation of true beauty all mixed up. Like a soup made of soybeans and pork fat, all mixed up together, you understand. And the person that says to you, I see this is fine, it has soybeans in it, says so on the label. You still say, yes, but there's something else in there. Oh, well, you're just too strict, you're just too careful. You see, that was the problem back there in the Garden of Eden. The Lord insisted that the way of beauty and of life was to take only the good. But Lucifer was very liberal. He suggested that the way to really know things and enjoy things and appreciate things was not to be so narrow. He suggested that the way was to include in the bill of fare another tree. What was the name of that? Tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Was it all evil? No, it was the mixture. It was the mixture. So you and I will have to be wary of that today. As we study the beautiful way, which do we want? The tree of life or the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Was there some beauty in that tree of knowledge of good and evil? Was it pleasant to the eyes? Yeah. Beautiful fruit. But our friends, there were some things about it that God said, now, don't take that. I have something better for you. And it's that something better we want. By the way, friends, I want to ask you, as we were studying there in that last hour's study, how many of you really believe that the beauty of Jesus is what you would like to have and to be? May I see your hand? Have you settled that? All right. Now I'd like to ask you another question. You don't need to raise your hands on this. We had in our last lesson. Do you think you'd have to change any to be like that? Do you? Would you be willing? And would you be willing, no matter what it costs? Now, remember, sometime in the next 2 weeks, you're going to face up to whether you really mean it or not. I rather think that it could be possible that everybody in this class will have that opportunity. I've been studying this subject a number of years and have taught this class many times. But I expect that the Lord's going to bring me to something in this class, and He's going to say to me, well, now, are you willing for your life to be changed on that point or on this point? And oh, friends, I want to be ready and willing and say, yes, Lord, change me. What do you say? And friends, I plead with you, enter into this class with that expectation. Expect that you're going to be changed. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that you're to take what somebody else says, whether it's me or anybody else. Oh, no. We're going to take the testimony of Jesus. But if either through the Word or the direct appeals of the Spirit, Jesus comes to you and says, "Dear one, here's something I'd like to change to make you more beautiful. Beautiful in your life, beautiful in your countenance, beautiful in your character, beautiful in your dress, beautiful in any other phase of life." I say, when Jesus comes to do that, say, "Yes, Lord." And the quicker the better. The sooner the better. Shall we tell him that? All the way along. But remember, now I want you to turn to Romans, the 12th chapter and the 2nd verse. I want you to see how God does this. You know, there are many people, they would like the dear Lord to just strap them down on the operating table and give them an anesthetic and go at the surgery. And they'd be willing to sign the release, you understand. But that isn't God's way of doing it. The only time God ever did anything like that was in the Garden of Eden, and we're not in Eden. Romans, the 12th chapter and the 2nd verse. Now look at that text and tell me, how does God intend that we shall be transformed? That word means changed, of course. How? By the renewing of our mind. Then before your life is changed, what must be changed? Before your dress is changed, what must be changed? Before your diet is changed, what must be changed? Before your music is changed, what must be changed? Your mind. Do you know that's the hardest thing in the world to change? Do you know it's hard to change your mind even when you want to? And if you don't want to, it's well nigh impossible. And so I warn you, friends, it's possible to sit through these classes and not get changed very much. That's very possible. Judas succeeded in it 1900 years ago. It's a sad thing that the closer we are to the most brilliant light, the darker our minds become unless we're willing to be changed as the light comes into the mind and soul. So God will bless us as we let our minds be changed. We're to be transformed through the renewing of our minds. I'm glad God has arranged that, aren't you? Now let's go, please, to Ministry of Healing 292. 292. What is it we're studying in this class? What's the name of the class? The Beautiful Way. We're going to study what beauty is, how you measure beauty, how you know whether something's beautiful or not. In the world, it's just a matter of getting some authority to agree with you. And what's beautiful today is outlandish tomorrow. But here is the definition. Ministry of Healing 292, the last sentence on the page. And I'd like to have you memorize this sentence, because it's one of the key statements in this whole class. What's the first word of this last sentence? God. What's the fourth word? Author. God is the author. Author of what? All beauty. What does author mean? He made it. It comes from Him. Anything that's really beautiful owes its origin to whom? To God. That's right. Let's read the sentence together. God is the author of all beauty, and only as we conform to His ideal shall we approach the standard of true beauty. I wonder why it says of true beauty. What's the opposite of true? False. What's another opposite? I think I heard it. What? Counterfeit. That's right. Counterfeit. How much is a genuine $100 bill worth? How much is a counterfeit $100 bill worth? What? Well, it ought to be worth a little, shouldn't it? No, it's not worth anything. It's not worth the paper it's written on, if somebody wants it for a souvenir. God is the author of all beauty, and only as we conform to His ideal shall we approach the standard of what? True beauty. All right. Shall we accept that then as a principle? Whether it's in diet, dress, music, reading, manners, anything, everything, our homes, furniture, our lives. The way we're going to find out what is beautiful is to ask who? God. And we're going to listen to what He says, and if He says this is beautiful, we'll say this is beautiful. And if He says no, that isn't pretty, we'll say no, that isn't pretty. Isn't that the way a child learns? Yeah. The father and mother says this is A, and what does the child say? A. That's the way we all learn. Some parent or teacher said this is A. And really, unless we had accepted it, you know where we'd have been. We'd have been stuck right there. So we'll accept what Jesus says about beauty, and we'll find that there are various principles that enter into it. Let's go now to Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter. Verse. He hath made everything what? Beautiful. It says in His time. That means in its time. And that's quoted that way from the Revised Version in the book Education, page 198. Notice that, please turn to it in the book Education, 198. He hath made everything, what? Beautiful in its time. I wish you'd learn that line. He hath made everything beautiful in its time. That's Ecclesiastes 3:11, first part, Revised Version. Would you say it with me? He hath made everything beautiful in its time. Now, if that's so, how shall we account for all these ugly things in the world today, even in nature? The monstrosities, both of animals and plants, the thorns, the briar. Do we charge God with those? No. What did Jesus say in the parable of the wheat and tares? Who sowed the tares? An enemy hath done this. Just put down in your notes Matthew 13:27 and 28. And let me read this interesting comment on this in volume 6, 186. You'll want this for your notes. One of those wonderful examples of how the spirit of prophecy magnifies and illuminates the Bible and nature. The same God who guides the planets works in the fruit orchard and in the vegetable garden. He never made a thorn, a thistle, or a tare. Volume 6, 186. God never made a thorn, a thistle, or a tare. These are Satan's work, the result of degeneration introduced by him among the precious things. Who's to blame for the thorns and thistles? Satan. Somebody says, well, can Satan create? Can he? No, but he can pervert. There's a difference. He can't take a clod of dirt and make any plant out of it, even a thorn. He can't do that. But he can take a plant that God has made beautiful and he can make it ugly. He can take an animal or a bird that God has made beautiful and he can make it ugly. He twists, perverts. Now I wonder, friends, just stop on that a minute. If that's so, and you can see it is from what I read, what in nature do you think that Satan is most interested in twisting? Man. Isn't that right? Because man is made in the image of God. And I'd like you to meditate on that. There's some very literal twisting that's being done today in various ways. All sorts of perversions, changing the bodies and the minds and the souls of men. Let's beware of it. God has made everything beautiful. Now, there's another thing that I want to notice in this verse. What are those last three words? In its time. Why does the wise man add that? God has made everything beautiful when? In its time. Is there an appropriateness to true beauty? Notice the first verse. Read that with me. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. So God has made everything beautiful in its time, and there is a time for everything. Would you rather have watermelons in the summertime, or would you rather have them for New Year's? What about it? Personally, I'm very glad the Lord made the watermelons to come along in the summertime. That suits me fine. Does it you? But you know, some people go to great lengths to have something way out of season. Now, I'm not criticizing that, but I think we do well to encourage in ourselves an appreciation of God's seasonal gifts. I know we can preserve some things to enjoy other times. I say I'm not trying to criticize that. But the pitiful thing is when people get so far that way is that the only time they're interested in something is when it's out of season. There are more people like that than you might imagine. Whenever a thing gets common, they're not interested in it. Must be something very unusual and out of season. Let's cultivate an enjoyment in the day-by-day provision that God makes, not only for food, but for beauty. I like the way this hymn puts it here. Number 94 in your hymnal. All beautiful, the march of days as seasons come and go. The hand that shaped the rose hath wrought the crystal of the snow. Is the snow crystal beautiful? Why, yes. The lace makers in Switzerland, they tell me, get their new patterns from the new snowflakes that fall each winter, because it's never two alike. Never two patterns alike. But we don't go out in that snowstorm and look for roses, do we? No. All beautiful, the march of days as seasons come and go. The hand that shaped the rose hath wrought the crystal of the snow. Let's enjoy the snow in the winter. What do you say? Let's enjoy the flowers in the springtime. Let us cultivate an enjoyment of the beauty that God provides, each in its proper place and each in its proper time. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. And this introduces the first principle of beauty we want to study this afternoon, that is the principle of order. Order. The right thing at the right time in the right place. Counsels on Health, page 101. Order is heaven's first law. Will you say that with me? Order is heaven's first law. So the first thing we want to study about beauty is order. A place for everything and everything in its place, a time for everything and everything on time. Do you like it that way? Are you sure you do? Now just be honest. What's your idea of a good time? Do you like bells? Do you like a regular time for meals? Is your idea of a vacation a time when you just eat any old time and sleep any old time and just have everything topsy-turvy? What is your idea of a good time anyway? I think there's some people that are so allergic to order that if they knew that things in heaven were really going to be orderly, they're not sure they'd want to go. They wouldn't want to be tied down to any program or schedule. One man told me, he said, I don't have any clock in my stomach, I just eat whenever I feel like it. Now, do you love order? Do you really? Now, I told you some of us might come to some place, somewhere in these 2 weeks, where to be just like the Master's beautiful plan would mean certain changes in us. And this might touch somebody here. Order. To love it. To really enjoy order. You know, the dear Lord knew that some of us weren't born that way. But thank God we can learn it. Volume 1, 649. Ministers should love order. What's to be our attitude toward order? Love it. Really enjoy it. Now I'll give you another little test. And if I need to apologize for this, you tell me. Do you love to sit in meeting where those in charge of the meeting would like to have you sit? I'm not talking about this afternoon. I think we're all doing very fine. But what do you think about when you go into a meeting place? Back in the days of Israel, the Lord had it outlined just where everybody was to march and everybody was to camp. Is that right? Was there a young man once back there that didn't like where his assignment was? Before he got through, he lost his life over it. If you don't remember that, look it up. It's quite interesting. Read this chapter in Volume 1 that I selected this piece of a sentence from. Very meaningful. Believe me, dear ones, before we get through with the preparation for the time of trouble, we're going to love order so much that we'll move in exact order like a company of soldiers. That's early writing, 271. And it won't be because some sergeant is barking at us either. It'll be because we what? Love order. Love order. Oh, what a wonderful thing. Now let's think of some of the ways in which we are to apply this principle of order as an ingredient of beauty. Take this one in the book Child Guidance, page 110. And this is order as applied to our homes. It's a good place to begin. We found in our other lesson that God wants us to have beautiful homes. One of the things that makes a home beautiful is order. Child Guidance 110. Remember that in heaven there is no disorder. and that your home should be a heaven here below. Isn't that nice? Volume 6, 171. Now this is written to students, but I hope we're all students. It's talking about our rooms. To each student in the home, I would say, be true to home duties. Discern for yourself. Notice for yourself if all things in your own room are spotless and in order. Who's to examine your room? Each one personally. Then it says that if it's in order and clean, then holy angels, as they pass through the room, will be led to linger because attracted by the prevailing order and cleanliness. Say, folks, I wonder what it would take to attract an angel. A friend of mine was telling about her little boy, just a little toddler. One Friday afternoon, his mother had him straightening up his playroom, cleaning up his room, getting ready for Sabbath. I guess she talked to him about the angels. When she asked him if everything was ready, he says, yes, except some things over behind the bed that the angels will never notice. Well, he had the idea, but he didn't have all of it, did he? This is quite an ideal, isn't it? I don't know whether any of us, if I should stop right at this point, would say we had arrived on this point. But can we keep moving toward it? Can we say, dear Jesus, help me to have a room in a home that's in order, so that when the angels come, they'll say, oh, let's stay here a while. This is so much like heaven. Everything in order. And what is order? A place for everything, and everything in its place, and a time for everything, and everything on time. Why, yes. Child Guidance, page 101. Oh, pardon me. I didn't give you the right book. Just forget that reference. I had already given you counsels on Health 101. Order is heaven's first law. Very well. Now let's think about order and with reference to our time, our daily and weekly schedules. Let's go to Psalm 127. Note the second verse. How practical the Bible is. In this beautiful way that we're learning to walk, very practical. You know, most of us, if we ever find beauty, we're going to find it in our daily lives. Very few of us will ever get to Switzerland. God wants to walk with us and have us walk with Him the beautiful way day by day. Psalm 127:2. Shall we read this together, please? It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so He giveth His beloved sleep. Did you ever hear of a person getting their beauty sleep? Well, this is it. And if you're going to live the beautiful life and have beautiful countenances, remember that God wants to give you what? Sleep. Of course, He can't give it unless you take it. Nobody ever yet could give you a gift unless you take it. Isn't that right? And so He says it's vain to do what? Rise up early and sit up late. Somebody says, well, I thought we were supposed to get up early. Not if you sit up late. That's vain. That's burning the candle at both ends. That won't work. That's not the beautiful way. Oh, somebody says, but Brother Frazee, you don't understand. Well, I don't want to understand. If it's going to rob me of God's beautiful way, do you? It's like when a person has all the reasons for not keeping the Sabbath, and he knows all the texts that show that he doesn't have to keep the Sabbath. Do you want to be convinced by that? Why, no. Because you love what? The Sabbath. Yes. You're not interested in all the arguments why people don't have to keep the Sabbath. You want to do it because it's God's blessed holy day. So let's not study up on all the reasons why this can't be done. By the way, why do you suppose the Lord made part of the day dark and part light? Any reason for that? Why, you remember what David says here, man goeth forth to his labor until when? You remember that? Of course, that's hopelessly out of date now. But anyway, in David's time, man goeth forth to his labor until the evening. Till the evening. And the Lord wants us, when the evening comes, to have our evening worship, our personal devotion, to do the other things that belong to the evening hour. And then what does this verse say that He's given us? Sleep. It's all right to get up early if we go to bed early. Jesus rose early. All right? Somebody says, I don't think I have enough time. Ministry of Healing, 208. You have your Ministry of Healing, turn to that. This is one of the most comforting or one of the most discouraging statements in all the spirit of prophecy. It just depends on which end of it you pick up. A hoe is very helpful if you pick it up by the handle, but if you insist on picking it up by the sharp end, you won't be able to do much with it and you may get hurt. And this statement that we're about to read will hurt you if you pick it up by the wrong end. If you pick it up by the right end, it'll give you a world of encouragement. Ministry of Healing 208, the third sentence. You found it? If every moment were valued and rightly employed, we should have, what are the next three words? Time for everything. Well, that's what Solomon said 3,000 years ago. We read it here, Ecclesiastes 3:1. To everything there is a time. Thank God, friends. And everything's beautiful in its time. Somebody says, well, I just don't see it. Well, I don't either. I accept it by faith, friend. There's a great many things in the Bible and spirit of prophecy that I don't see. I don't see how in the world we're going to get from here to heaven. But I believe it, don't you? Yes. And I don't see how in the world that this is true, but I believe it with all my heart. And I'm so happy that it's true. There's a time for everything, and if every moment's valued and rightly employed, there'll be time for everything. So let's keep asking Jesus to teach us that beautiful way. And isn't it beautiful? Now, in order to do that, of course, we must seek first what? Kingdom of God and His righteousness, and then there are some other things that it will be added to us. Turn in your hymnals, please, to 160. Do you all have it now? 116? Will you read with me that first beautiful stanza? Dear Lord and Father of mankind, forgive our feverish ways. Reclothe us in our rightful mind. In purer lives thy service find. In deeper reverence praise. And then notice that fourth stanza. Drop thy still dews of quietness, till all our strivings cease. Take from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives, our what? Our ordered lives confess what? The beauty of thy peace. Oh, let indeed our ordered lives confess the beauty of his peace. Shall we seek to enter into that, friends? Now let me be very frank with you. We're going to have to miss a lot of things to do it. I missed a dozen breakfasts right here on this place this morning, but I got one. And that was all I needed, wasn't it? To think of all I missed. Do you know the thing that's killing thousands of people today? They're trying to keep up with so much. There never was a time in all history when so many people were trying to keep up with so many things. And aside from all the trash and the filth in radio and TV, we have that race, that rush on the part of many people to keep up with what's going on in Tokyo and Hong Kong, in Bombay, in Calcutta, in Rome, in London, in Paris, in New York, in San Francisco, and 100 other places. Keep up. Did you hear what's happened? No, I didn't hear it. You didn't. Men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking. For looking. It's killing them off, friends. The things they're looking at and listening to. Just a race, a rush. Well, Jesus says, come apart and rest of us. Come apart and rest of us. Now, like everything else, you get too much of it. I doubt very much if there are many people here that are getting too much sleep. Could happen. There's some verses to read on that. We may come to them presently. But remember, this is a part of beauty. Order. Order. A time for everything and everything on time. Place for everything, everything in its place. Exodus 28:2. Here's something else we're to apply this principle of beauty and order in beauty to. Exodus 28:2. There may be some here this afternoon to whom this will be a new verse, a new thought, that the Bible should have a statement like this, but here it is. Exodus 28:2. What's the last word in the verse? Beauty. That's our word. Beauty, the beautiful way. All right. Let's read it together. And thou shalt make holy garments for Aaron thy brother, for glory and for beauty. Is God interested in our dress being beautiful? Or was that just for Aaron? Well, let's find out. Volume 6, page 96. The spirit of prophecy applies this thought, this very statement here, to our dress today. Volume 6, 96. For Christ's sake, whose witnesses we are, we should seek to make the best of our appearance. Could you try saying that with me? For Christ's sake, whose witnesses we are, we should seek to make the best of our appearance. Now, some of us don't have much to start with, but we're to do the best we can with what has been supplied. Is that right? And one of the great things in dress is this matter of order. order, appropriateness. Look at volume 1, or put down in your notes, volume 1, 275. When we lose taste for order and neatness in dress, we virtually leave the truth. For the truth never degrades but elevates. Is that statement in the spirit of prophecy? Yes, that's it. Why, do you know what some people's idea of dress reform is? It's some sloppy, ugly thing, but that isn't dress reform at all. The servant of the Lord speaks about some people who look like that their dresses had just sort of been blown and just lighted on them. No arrangement, no order, no fit. So part of the beautiful way is to have dress that expresses what? Order, appropriateness. What about music? Messages to Young People 296 says music should have beauty, pathos, and power. Don't we love beautiful music? It's one of the great things we think about when we think of beauty, isn't it? Is music. But is there order in good music? That's one of the things about much of the modern, I was about to say music, that isn't the right word for it, noise. It pays no attention whatever to order. It disregards utterly the proper laws of harmony and rhythm. Remember, we were studying a while ago that God's made everything beautiful, but the devil has what? Perverted it, twisted it. That's what's happened to a lot of music. It's been twisted, perverted. Beautiful music will have order in it. It'll conform to proper laws. The angels are that way. You know how they have it arranged in heaven so the music is orderly? I was interested to find this in volume 1, 146. I have been shown the order, the perfect order of heaven, and have been enraptured as I listen to the perfect music there. There is one angel who always leads, who first touches the harp and strikes the note, then all join in the rich, perfect music of heaven. So in some things it takes organization to get heavenly order, is that right? And that leads me to the next point of beauty in order, and that is in the church. Turn to 1 Corinthians, the 14th chapter, please. Verses 33 and 40. Just as we're to love order in music, love order in our homes, love order in our dress, so we're to love order in the church. What does the 33rd verse say God is not the author of? Confusion. 40th verse, let all things be done decently and in order. So let us cooperate with the Lord and with the Lord's delegated agencies as they seek to make the church a place of order, volume 5, 491. The church is the sanctuary for the congregation. There should be rules in regard to the time, the place, and the manner of worshiping. Nothing that is sacred, nothing that pertains to the worship of God should be treated with carelessness or indifference. Now, in all these studies, we're going to introduce certain principles, make a few applications, and then pass on to other principles. The next principle that I want to study is balance. Turn to Ministry of Healing 292. This principle of order, we could spend all week just studying it and its various ramifications and applications. But this, as we have said, is an introductory course. Ministry of Healing 292. The second sentence in the last paragraph. One of the chief elements in physical beauty is what? Symmetry, the harmonious proportion of parts. How would you like to have one ear that was twice as big as your other ear? Be stunning, wouldn't it? I don't doubt you'd attract some attention. But just let me tell you, friends, there's some people who would give $1,000 if they could get an ear that was one twice as big as the other. They're doing things just as silly, just as outlandish, if they can. In one of my classes just a few years ago, not very long, right here in this room, I just happened to think of some outlandish example of what a person might do. And I was illustrating. I didn't know that anybody had done it. I said, how do you suppose, how would it be if somebody would find a way to dye eyes? Don't you suppose some people want to do it? And somebody raised a hand and said they've already started. Think of it. Well, so I'm sure some people would like to have an ear twice as big as the other one, because it would do what? Attract attention. But would it be beautiful? No. No. It would be out of proportion. There'd be no symmetry there. Now, that isn't to say that the only kind of symmetry is where there's always just as much on this side as the other of everything that's done. We're not trying to go into all the different possible ways of having balance. It's formal and informal balance. And we have instruction in the spirit of prophecy on studying nature or variety. But there is such a thing as imbalance. And this points out the fact that the trouble with some of the fashions of the world is that they throw the body out of balance. Can you think of one fashion? It's quite common today that throws the body very literally out of balance. What is it? High heels. Okay. That's exactly what it does. Throws it out of balance. Now, is that beautiful? Well, it couldn't be. Oh, but somebody says you've got a closed mind. That's right. We have closed minds. We have closed minds. Would it have been a good thing if our Mother Eve had had a closed mind when she heard that serpent talk? That's right. When God says something, that ought to close our mind to considering something that contradicts what He says. Now, it's all right to have an open mind to what God says. There's plenty to investigate. But we should never investigate that which contradicts God's way and God's program. And when God made the human body, He made it beautiful and symmetrical. And now this balance enters into everything in life. It enters into our concepts. Let's go to Philippians, the 4th chapter and the 5th verse. Philippians 4:5. What does it say? Let your moderation be known unto all men, the Lord is at hand. So this is written to Adventists, expecting Jesus to come right away. Now, do you know the first thing that has to happen in order for your moderation to be known to all men? Well, you have to have some. That's right. And then you're not to hide it, you're to what? Let it be known. Now, we may have to bear the burden sometimes of having the reputation of being extremists, but we should never glory in it. We ought to cultivate everything which will help us to be known as what? According to this? Moderate. Moderate. In other words, the place to be is in which part of the road? The middle of the road. Of course, we want to be sure to be in the right road. I'd hate to be in the middle of the downward road, wouldn't you? Or any place in it. But on the narrow road. And the narrower the road is, the more important it is to be where? In the middle. Oh, I pray that God will help us in this class and in our lives to keep from extremes. But the only way to keep from extremes is to remember the principle of this verse, to let our moderation be known. Elder Haskell used to say, brethren, remember, it takes at least 3 ropes, each pulling in a different direction, to hold a tent pole straight up. How many of you ever helped pitch a tent? Not many of you. I've helped pitch many a one. And when we're pitching a tent, it calls for those 3 ropes. Well, I'm on 1 rope. And here's Brother Jones over here. He's on another rope. Brother Smith, he's on the other rope over here. Well, my job is to what? Pull on this rope. But I must be careful not to pull so hard that I pull the tent down, you understand. And I must also remember that Brother Smith and Brother Jones, even though they seem to be pulling against me, is for a good purpose. It's to give us a beautiful tent. Isn't that right? And we need all of us. And so I'm to pull on my rope, but I'm not to try to overbalance them. I'm to balance them. They're to balance me. That's beauty. That's order. That's cooperation. And if we learn that, we'll be prepared for heaven. And before that, we'll be prepared for the loud cry. Some people seem to have the gift of seeing the most extreme meaning in statements. In the book Counsels on Diet and Foods, the compilers of it arranged a whole chapter on extremes. Extremes. You'll find that in page 195. It's worth studying on this. But you say, well, that's just the compiler. Well, let's go back at that. Take this book, Ministry of Healing, that Sister White herself wrote, every line of it. Now, we should look at the table of contents here. On page 10, Health Principles. General hygiene, hygiene among the Israelites, dress, diet and health, flesh as food, and then what? Extremes in what? In diet. Extremes in diet. Then Sister White herself, guided by the Spirit, thought that it was worthy of a whole chapter in this book just to warn us against what? Extremes. Extremes. Did you ever see anybody that thought he was extreme? It could happen, I suppose, but not very often. We need these books and we need one another to balance us, brothers and sisters. We need to be willing to be balanced. Now, there's an example over here in the book of Proverbs that I want to use on this. Some of you have heard me use this before. Let's turn first to Proverbs 25:27. Proverbs 25:27. I want you to see an example of how people can go to extremes. And they can quote the Bible and do it too. Proverbs 25:27. It is not good to do what? To eat much honey. Well, I get to looking at that and I say, well, now it isn't good to eat much honey. Probably be better if I didn't eat any at all. Then I'll be safe. But is that what it says? No. No. Here's somebody else. The one they like is Proverbs 24:13. Proverbs 24:13. What's that say? My son, eat thou honey, because it is good. And you know, I can take that and take the extreme meaning of it, and you know what I can say? I can get up and tell an audience. I heard somebody do this on another text just like it. I won't tell you which one it was, but it's the same wording. My son, eat thou honey, because it is good. I can say there's a command. God tells you to eat honey. You'd better be doing it. My son, eat thou honey, because it is good. All right. Well, now, but the other fellow, he says, well, yes, but this text over here says it isn't good to eat much honey. I don't think I'll eat it. Now, some of you know this other text I like to put with it, and that's the 25th chapter and the 16th verse. That balances it all up. But we need the other two. How much honey shall you eat? Sufficient. And if you eat too much, something may happen. He even warns about that. That's right. I saw one man, though, eat a soup plate full once, and he didn't vomit. So I suppose he thought he hadn't had enough yet. And you know that dear brother, bless his heart, was when I was a boy. And I thought he was a great health reformer, but I learned better as I watched. And then he wouldn't touch not one tiny bit of candy. Oh, no. Not one tiny bit of candy, but a whole soup plate full of honey. Well, that was a natural sweet, you understand.